Good morning and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants event. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I'll be your host for today. If you've been following along this month, you know that we've kicked all the men out and we're hosting amazing women in science, exploration, adventure, and conservation from all around the world. If you haven't checked out the events coming up, we just put out a new update newsletter, so that'll be hitting your inboxes shortly, or you can head to exploringbytheseat.com and you can find all the events still coming up in February. So rolling right along, we have an amazing speaker with us today. We have Rosa Vasquez Espinoza joining us. She is a Peruvian chemical biologist, a National Geographic explorer, an educator, a conservationist, and an award-winning artist. She founded the project Micro Amazon that explores the microscopic universe of extreme environments and unique animals in the Amazon rainforest. And she's doing that to look for new molecules and enzymes for medicine and green chemistry. So one of the areas she's been exploring is what's known as the Boiling River, a roughly 4-mile stretch of water flowing through Peru's rainforest. So I'm going to bring Rosa in live with us right now. Hey, Rosa, how are you doing today?
Hi, Joe. So good to see you. Thank you for the very kind introduction.
Oh, of course. We always love when you're able to join us. We've got a great group of classrooms from Canada and the US joining us today. We're going to play some Kahoot. We're going to have some Q&A action. So if you're tuning in via YouTube, say hey in the chat. But for now, Rosa, I'm going to let you take over for a little bit.
Lovely. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for making the time to be here with us today. I am always deeply excited to talk with classrooms because I think really that's where a lot of the inspiration came to me personally for the work that I do today. So I'll guide you a little bit more about to learn more about my own story and background, how I became a National Geographic explorer and a scientist, and a bit more on the current work we are doing. I'm actually heading to the Amazon rainforest in just a few days for my next expedition. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Give me just 1 second here. And is that okay, Joe? Can everybody see it?
Looks good, Rosa.
Lovely. So my path, it's a little bit unconventional, and I'm very excited to share it with you. And my work as a doctor in chemical biology focuses on amplifying hidden worlds within the Amazon jungle. Typically, when we think about the Amazon rainforest, you may think about such a remote and exotic place filled with dangerous anacondas and perhaps flesh eating flowers and all these larger biodiversity organisms that are beautiful and exotic and important to know about. But so often we miss on these smaller worlds that are equally important to maintain the ecosystem of the Amazon rainforest and to even understand it fully. And those are the worlds that I like to focus on through science as well as through storytelling. And the reason why I became interested to begin with in this topic, I really think it's because of my origins, my family, and the classrooms that I was a part of. I grew up in Peru, so I'm Peruvian. That's currently where I am right now, visiting my family and getting ready for the next expedition. And my family came from different parts of the country. Some came from the Andes, the high mountains. Some came from the jungle. Some came from the city. So I was raised amongst these different environments. I went to school in the city and I would spend the summers in the Andes helping harvest potatoes or spend some summers traversing through the Amazon River in these small boats known as peque peque, as you can see in the photo there. They get their name of peque peque because of the sound they make while they are moving the little motor and going through the water like peque peque. So to me, that you used to feel like a Disneyland experience. It just felt like unlimited playtime to really unleash creativity. And little did I know that looking back now, that connection that I had constantly with nature really inspired a lot of the questions that I had while growing up. How do plants work? How do nature work? And I do have to attribute a lot of that to my grandmother, who was a traditional healer in her community in the Andes. They had very limited access to Western medicine, hospitals, and even medical doctors. And so she, among a few other elderly people in the community, took it upon themselves to be the ones that transfer some of the knowledge they had received from previous generations, from their grandparents, and etc., to be able to provide some cures for when people were feeling sick. And all of these knowledges my grandma took from the mountains to the city whenever they moved back, where I grew up. And so she developed a small natural pharmacy in our backyard where I was raised. So every day after school, I would spend the whole afternoon with my grandmother, and I would just follow her around everywhere. I was just literally behind her every single step, telling her everything I thought about, asking her all the questions I had. And amongst those, I was just very curious as to how is it possible that plants have some sort of medicinal power. To me, that just sounded like magic. And she used to prepare her herbal medicines around me and show me a little bit. But because she never had the chance to go to school, she told me, well, I know the empirical aspect, I know the cultural context. However, for you to understand the actual biology and chemistry, you go become a doctor and learn about it and then tell me. And so that's what I did. At the time, there were not many opportunities to study science in Peru, so I applied to the US. And before I continue a bit more on my story, I do want to pause to give this really cool example that I think even further exemplifies what made me so excited to join this field on natural products and nature. And it's an example I learned in school, through one of our textbooks from the Pacific Youth Tree. So in around 1950s, 1960s, the United States made a call to try to find new ways to cure cancer. They had been working very hard on the laboratory to try to look for new synthetic solutions, new medicines that they could be building to try to tackle more difficult cancers to treat. However, they were really not getting the results that they were looking for. So then they thought, could we go back to nature and try to get some of the solutions there? And so they made a giant call and they partnered with the Department of Agriculture to be able to go and look for natural species, plants, animals, sediments, to try to find anything that may give them a clue to develop a new medicine for cancer. And after a lot of search, I think they searched over 800 natural species, they found this tree, Pacific yew tree, that has this blood-like dark red resin color in the bark. And after studying the different chemical components and genetic components of this bark, they learned that there was one key molecule known as taxol that could help kill cancer cells. And thus, by adding a few more years of research and studies, they were able to develop a medicine that is still used to date to treat different type of tumor forming cancers. So they were able to go back to nature, look for a solution, apply a lot of science in between in order to be able to find a solution for humans, in a more sustainable way as well. And so I would be learning this type of classes, this type of stories in the classroom. And so I was fascinated to dive a bit deeper in what my grandmother was telling me at the time. So then that kind of triggers some questions in my mind as to what are the type of chemistry that are in the plants in my own backyard. And through trips that I took to the Amazon jungle at the time with school, I started to continue asking the same questions. What do we know at this almost invisible microscopic genetic chemical level of the Amazon jungle? And I realized that there was some things that were known, but a lot more that weren't. And I think it really depends on how we ask questions, which is something that I really try to emphasize with classrooms. You don't need to know it all, and sometimes we think that everything's been discovered, but we just need to look into new spaces, whether it's our own backyard or somewhere more remote like the Amazon jungle. So, with that, I decided to pursue a career in science, specifically in an area that is known as chemical biology. So, I pursue an undergrad in biology and chemistry, and then decided to pursue a 5 year PhD at the University of Michigan in chemical biology to be able to learn how to conduct this type of investigation in the laboratory, how these type of things work. And in that process, I became a National Geographic explorer as I had a deep interest in connecting all my scientific work with conservation-driven actions, as well as with being able to tell stories from the field, which is what I get to do now. And in all of these talks so far, I haven't told you. So that I actually started as an artist. So I used to be fascinated by our world, still am. And I became a professional dancer for a few years. I was really deeply into folkloric and in cultural dances, did some competitions and teaching. And I like to highlight that because I think we often forget that when we go deep into a topic, we think, oh, if you have any other hobbies, then you're going to get distracted or your work is not going to be as impactful as it could be. But I tend to disagree with that because I think the different curiosities that we have and that we get to explore, especially as kids and as we grow up, are really what ends up making us unique and approaching our work in a unique way. And by being able to dedicate some of my time and my passion to dance, that really made me think very creatively about the work that I want to do. And I apply this type of visual and movement creation into the storytelling projects that I create and use to communicate the science that I do. And so today I'll tell you two very brief stories, one on Amazonian stingless bees and one on a river that quite literally boils in the Amazon rainforest. And first I'm going to play this video. So I'm not crazy. These are actual stingless bees. So they really do not sting. They can bite, but they do not sting. And you may have heard of them before, you may have not, but they actually exist all around the world, specifically around the tropics on our planet. They can be found in Central America, they can be found in Africa, all around where you have these tropical jungles typically. And in the Amazon, they have been there for centuries. We even found reports that a long time ago, before the Spanish came to explore South America, stingless bees and their uses were already being they were already known by Amazonian indigenous communities for a very long time. And what kind of uses are these? We know that bees are really helpful with pollination. In fact, it is because of bees around the world that we are able to eat. 2 out of 3 foods that you eat depend quite literally on bees, which is why you may have heard projects about save the bees around. However, there's some information that hasn't been shared, which is save what kind of bees, because that really does make a difference. And stingless bees have been kind of left aside, not just by the area where I work, which is the Peruvian Amazon, but really all around the world in terms of their legal protection, in terms of their recognition, and etc. Many reasons as to why that happens. One of them being that compared to the stinging bee, the one that we are all familiarized with the stinging bee tends to produce a large amount of honey per beehive, about 40 to 50 kilograms or liters of honey. Meanwhile, stingless bees tend to produce much less, about 4 to 5 only per beehive. However, Amazonian communities and others around the world have known that this honey can be quite medicinal. And so, stingless bees in the Amazon play many roles. They play a key role in the culture. They are deeply associated with spiritual powers, and communities that keep the bees think of the bees not just as a pet that they're keeping or as a resource to improve their agricultural production, but instead they think of them as family. They live with them, although they're not in their house, but they're right in their backyard, which happens to be the Amazon jungle. So they are a deeply part of the daily conversation because they are considered family. They also play a key role in the economy because thanks to the keeping of stingless bees in the Amazon, people are able to collect and harvest their honey as well as their pollen and sell that in local markets, which allows for the communities to be able to build a sustainable circular economy in their areas without having to go to other activities that may be more detrimental to the environment, like cutting down trees. They also play a key role in traditional medicine. The honey that stingless bean made are thought to be very quite powerful curatives. They have been reported, communities have report that they use the stingless bee honey to treat up to 14 different diseases, including gastrointestinal, skin conditions, upper respiratory infections, etc. They even report to have used it to treat COVID. They play a key role in the food and in the society as well. And with all of these, In partnership with local scientists, we are developing some of the first studies that are taking place in the Peruvian Amazon to try to decode what the science behind this Amazonian stingless bee honey is. What does the chemistry look like? What are the molecules that could be contributing to this medicinal power that communities claim this has? Could there be any type of contaminants that we find that we should let others know so that the quality can be better monitored? And we have found a few different things so far that we're currently in the process of publishing, which is we have found different plant derived natural dyes and flavor molecules, which makes sense. The bees go to the different plants, flowers, and trees around it, feed on the nectar, and most likely are transporting those molecules back into the honey. Depending on the bee species that makes these medicinal honeys, the honey ends up adopting different colors. Perhaps in the supermarket, we are used to seeing a very thick type of dense yellowish type of color honey. However, in the Amazon, we can find reddish, orangey type of tones, even kind of dark black tones of honey. And they all depend on the type of flowers and trees that surround the bee ecosystem at the time. So it's quite fascinating how flexible these bees are to really eat and adapt to what it's around them. We have also found so far indications that there are molecules that are associated with some of the medicinal power that the communities suggest that there are here. But more to that as soon as we publish. So I cannot get too deep into that right now. Another interesting thing that we have found, which we do want to raise awareness on, are contaminants like pesticides. So we believe that when spraying pesticides in an area, people may think, oh, we are killing the plague. So on that side, it could be positive. However, I think there hasn't been that much implication or awareness on the fact that pollinators like bees come and feed on these plants that have the pesticides sprayed all over them. And so end up absorbing some of these pesticides quite literally into their bodies and then into the honey they make, but also impacting their own health. And so different countries around the world are starting to work a bit more actively on this because bees' health in general, not just stingless ones, is decreasing around the world. People, agriculture people in the US have reported that bees are living half the time that they should be living. And so that's really concerning when we go back to what I said at first, that 2 out of 3 foods depend on bees. And so we really need to bring that awareness back a little bit, to go back to the field and study what's happening, to understand and try to potentially find solutions to all of these issues. Something positive with all of this too is that our studies are showing us that by keeping stingless bees in the Amazon, we can increase agricultural production of native crops up to 44%, suggesting that they could be more effective pollinators than the stinging bee, which often people literally bring from outside into the Amazon to try to increase reforestation and production of agricultural crops. And why it feels a bit, when I say it out loud, feels a bit like a contradiction. Why would people be bringing literally foreign bees from outside into the environment to help with this if there are stingless bees there? And however, this is happening in reality, and I think it's because there was a lack of knowledge on one, that there are stingless bees, and on two, that they are very effective pollinators. So this is the type of conversation we're trying to shift so that we can inform agricultural companies and institutions to be able to promote more local beekeeping. And the type of work, scientific and conservation work that we're doing, we're really pairing up from an artistic perspective so that we can, like the video that you saw at the beginning, so we really can convey a strong message that is not just dependent on a scientific publication that we put out together, but also really through a visual perspective that allows people to immerse into the world and really connect with the key players that are behind all of this work. And something that we're also actively looking forward to work in this project is that we're partnering with different institutions within the Peruvian government so we can take some legal action. We learned that there's no legal recognition or protection of stingless bees, which then puts them really at a threat to disappear. Deforestation is actively hitting them, as well as the constant reintroduction of foreign bees into the environment, stinging bees that tend to be more aggressive against the stingless bees that don't really have those type of mechanisms like a sting to defend themselves. And so That's on one project. And I'll just briefly touch on another one, and then I'll love to hear all your questions, which is on a project that it's also really close to my heart, an extremely fascinating extreme ecosystem that is also within the Peruvian Amazon, but not quite in the same area where the stingless bees that I was talking about are. And it's known as the Boiling River, a river that quite literally boils. Its traditional name is Shanaintimpishka, known as boil with the heat of the sun. And in some spots of the river, temperatures have reached as high as 200 Fahrenheit. So extremely, extremely hot. You get immediately third-degree burns if you just have your skin there for 1 second. So really, no animal, no mammal can survive there at all. This place holds a strong and important cultural meaning to the communities around it, given that different type of gods or spirit like meanings are associated to each natural space. So for example, the water is associated with a type of, you can call it god. The vapor as well, they're associated with strong medicinal powers. And so the community in this area, led by the maestro Juan Flores, who is in this photo, have protected their natural ecosystem for a long time, which we're really appreciative of. Andres Russo, another Nat Geo explorer that is fantastic, a fantastic researcher and a dear friend. It's the one that has been studying the geological part of why this river even boils for a long time, and his work is going to be published soon, so look out for that. But he has written a really interesting, cool book that describes more on this river. If you were interested, you can find it online. It flows hot for nearly 4 miles. And what is even more unique about this river, why it's different to other boiling rivers around the world, is that it's really far, over 400 miles away from the nearest volcano. So, just to give you an example, the Yellowstone National Park, Yellowstone boiling waters are extremely hot as well, also acidic, but they are extremely associated with a volcano. And that happens with a lot of thermal hot springs around the world. There are a few only that are not associated with a volcano. And in this specific scenario, this boiling river, it also happens to be placed in the heart of one of the most biodiverse regions of our planet. So, a question that was left on people's minds was, nothing really can survive here, right? Is that true? And it was through our eyes of chemical biology that we wanted to continue expanding that question and looked at even much more smaller level, at a micro level. And by being able to explore nature through this way, we realized that maybe mammals and animals cannot survive here, but other tinier microorganisms can. So as you see here, all of these green type of algae, which is a type of microorganism, has come together in such large communities to the point that they go from being microscopic, invisible to the naked eye, to now forming colors and shapes that we can see with our naked eye, being able to survive where there's quite literally boiling water. And so, what that tells me as a scientist is that these microorganisms have a unique power. They have been able to evolve their DNA and their chemistry to be able to survive where nothing else can. And we know this type of microbes as extremophiles because they love the extremes. In this case, they love the heat. So the more specific term would be thermophiles. It would be your equivalent of microorganisms that love to live in, for example, high pressure or extreme cold environments, and etc. Extremes. They love the extremes. And so we thought it would be really interesting to dive a little bit further in this type of extremophiles in the Boiling River to be able to decode how can they survive. Could that inspire future studies on how to help plants thrive in hotter environments? Could we be learning perhaps about their chemistry in order to access new solutions for the planet, for bioremediation, climate environments that are polluted from oil, for example, or even being able to access new medicines? And so, sponsored by a grant through National Geographic, we were able to put together a team of really fantastic researchers and artists to go and explore the river from a multidisciplinary perspective and collect samples from your hottest spots to some of the cooler ones, because it does eventually cool down, in order to explore what the microbial composition it is, what kind of microbes are here, what can they tell us, what can we learn about it. And we are really close to getting this work out there. So hopefully I can come back to talk to you guys when that is out there. But we are creating a website that is going to be free to access for everyone, bilingual, so you can explore the river with us per se, and see the photos that we took at the macro level, the macroscopic level, as well as this microscopic level, and see some of the results that we have found along the way. This was an extremely interesting experience as an explorer, because it is an extreme location. So we do have to be super aware about safety at all times. You take one wrong step, and then you're not on a rock anymore. And that's something that we have to be always very mindful of, as well as making sure that the work that happens takes place without impacting negatively the environment. We're not leaving any residues behind that could be detrimental to the space where we work with. And that's something really important to always keep in mind when we are in nature, really anywhere. Um, Something that I also really love about this project is the fact that it allowed me to show that anybody can really do adventure driven science in a way. There was this one spot of the river that was known as the Spider-Man wall, because it's kind of like a small cliff and you have extremely hot water below you. And in order to get to the other side, which was like kind of like a small little island, you needed to rock climb. You literally needed to grab one rock from one side like that to the other side, almost forming the shape of Spider-Man, which is how it got its name, and then carefully get yourself to the other side. But because it's so dangerous to get to do that, very few people had been to the other side, which immediately told me that that means it's quite pristine with the minimum amount of contamination. So I became immediately scientifically interested in collecting samples from that space to be able to study them in the lab as well. But they had told me that no girl yet had done this. And so I thought, well, we need to change that. And I had basic rock climbing experience and two experts that were right next to me guiding me through the whole experience to make this as safe as possible, but also show that there shouldn't be any prejudices about who can do what in the field. And so I'll
How do you feel right now?
Not too bad, as long as I don't sleep.
See, you see the bubbling waters down there?
Yeah, try not to see them.
Okay, sorry.
And so my mom was really mad that I did that, but everything was fine. We did it very safely and very cautiously. But it was just really exciting to be able to show that anybody can do that type of exploration as well. We took those samples to the lab, and we're getting ready to publish this work that we've been carrying out for the last 3 years in a larger team in collaboration with the University of Michigan, as well as with the Universidad Nacional Agraria in Peru. So, with all of that, with the two stories I've told you so far, what I really would like to highlight is the fact that we can approach work through multiple lenses. In my case, I approach it through scientific research as well as through artistic storytelling in order to use these different tools to find effective conservation strategies that help the Amazonia, that help the more fragile environments, the more fragile organisms within the Amazon rainforest that is already being threatened from so many factors: deforestation, illegal mining, contamination, and so on. And so we're really trying to put a positive change, a positive spin to all of these, and being able to approach exploration from a slightly new perspective where it's not just deeply science or it's not just deeply art, but instead creating a dialogue and a conversation between scientists and artists so that everybody can be involved in the process of exploring and conserving a new space. Um, I'm always excited to connect with classrooms, as I say in the beginning, because I really think that's where we get a lot of the sparks, even if it's just one talk you see one day or one book you read one day. And so I encourage you to go and explore your own backyard, your own spaces. If you live in a city, any type of connection you can get to nature, even if it's seeing some of the birds, look at the smaller level as well, because that's where a lot of the magic can happen. Thank you so much for your attention. Here you can find me on social media. You can also reach to me directly by email if you have any specific questions, and you can also invite you to check out my website. Thank you.
All right, Rosa, thank you so much for that great presentation. I'm going to tuck that screen share away. You get to work in some pretty amazing environments in the rainforest and then along the river, the boiling river in Peru. Absolutely amazing. So let's take a little time here and let's do a little Kahoot action with our classroom. See how well they're paying attention. Here's the link right here, kahoot.it. If you head over there, it's going to ask you for a PIN number. Now, if your class is lucky enough to have one-to-one technology, maybe a Chromebook or a tablet at your seat, you can join that way. Otherwise, your teacher could pop it up at the front and you guys could shout out your answers. Even if you can't log in with technology, just play along and shout out your answers and see how you do. So here we go. Let me share my screen, kahoot.it, and then you will be asked for a PIN number. And I have one right here for you. 698-7949. So we'll give a moment or two to get some of our classes or some of our individual students into their spots. If you have your phone, like a mobile device or a tablet, use that QR code and just scan that directly and it'll bring you right into your spot. But I do see some students, I do see some classes joining. We've got the Epic Owl, the Amazing Leopard, the Fuzzy Impala. So we'll give it a couple more seconds here to get a few classrooms in. I think there's 5 questions today, a little bit of true and false, a little bit of multiple choice, 20 seconds to get your answer in. If you get the answer correct, you're getting points. If you do it really fast, you get even more. But if you get that answer wrong, it's a big nothing for you. You have to get it right. And the quicker you do, the more points you're going to get. So a couple more seconds here, and then we will take this live, and then we'll change gears and we'll go to a little Q&A action.
I'm loving the names and the icons, the avatars.
Yeah, nice animal icons, computer generated for us, like the creative bat. Okay, a couple more seconds and we are going to go live, and then we'll see who comes out on top. Maybe it'll be someone with a nice rainforest animal name. We'll see. Here we go. Let's get a little volume here too. Okay, first question coming up. In which country does Rosa do her field work? Was it Argentina? Was it Peru? Was it Ecuador? Or was it Costa Rica? Which country does Rosa do her field work? 4 choices there. One of those is right. You've got 5 more seconds to lock in your answer. All right, good job, crew. We know it is in Peru. Let us see what comes up next. The inspired pony is holding down that top spot. Let's get to a true and false question. The Pacific yew tree's bark has anti-cancer properties. Was that true or was that false? The Pacific yew tree's bark has anti-cancer properties. We learned about something about that right at the beginning when Rosa was telling us about some of her inspiration to get into the field that she's in now. All right, that is true. We have so much left to explore and discover looking at plants and all of the amazing cures for different diseases that could be out there if we take the time to look at them, like Rosa's doing. Inspired Pony is still holding down that top spot. We've got a true and false coming up here. Rosa was a former professional DJ. Is that true or is that false? Rosa was a former professional DJ. A few more seconds in to put your answer in there. True or false? Was she a former professional DJ? All right. Good job, crew. We know that she was a former professional dancer. Rosa, do you still get to dance?
I do. I still get to do it for myself now. Yeah.
All right, that's good. Inspired Pony is not letting go of that top spot. Our next question: why are stingless bees so important to people living in the Amazon? Is it pollination? Is it medicinal honey? Is it a boost to the economy? Or is it all of the above? So it's always important to read the question before you jump on the first thing that comes to mind. Is it pollination, medicinal honey, boost to the economy, or all of the above? All right, a little bit of a spread. So everybody's kind of right, but the best answer is all of the above. We could have also added cultural importance and significance to the people living there as well. Here we go. Final question. It's close. It is a true and false. 2 out of 3 foods we eat are pollinated by bees. True or false? 2 out of 3 foods we eat are pollinated by bees. Last few seconds. Last couple answers trickling in. All right. Couldn't fool many there. Absolutely true, which is why it's kind of alarming. Well, definitely very alarming that their numbers are falling around the world. But we can see why they are so important. Third place, we've got the amazing leopard. In second place, we've got the lovely penguin. And that top spot, are we going to have a shift? Did someone sneak in right at the end? The Inspired Pony held it tape to tape. Question 1 right through to the end. Very cool. All right. Well, thanks so much for taking part in that with us, gang. Let's get to a little live Q&A action here. I want to start with, let's see, we've got some 6th graders in Vancouver hanging out with Miss Boomer. Let me bring them in front and center. Here they come. Hey, grade 6s, how we doing today? You want to grab that mic for me? And then we'll steal a question. There we go.
Sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
Someone have a question? Please, someone have a question? How about if they were strapped in?
I have a question.
Is it appropriate? Stavros, come on up.
You can also come back if you want me to swing back your way.
Come quickly.
When
Nice
you
and loudly.
When you were like rock climbing, did you have like a strap to hold you on, or like were you just by yourself with like no help at all?
Free solo. Nope. I just had my hands, and actually the rock that I had to hold on had small sprinkles of boiling water, and it had also a lot of critters and spiders. So I could feel everything kind of like on me, but I really couldn't focus on that because if I let go, it's gonna be harder to really hold on.
Thank you.
All right, great question. All you had there was Andres to cheer you on there. His voice
Yes.
in the background. All right. If you are tuning in live via YouTube, use that chat sidebar. But I want to go to the River School now in Washington, D.C. Let's bring them in front and center here. How we doing, River School?
Hi.
All right. Who's ready? Who's got a question?
Hey guys, be quiet so that they can hear. Max, ask your question. You were saying about the bees?
When they bite.
Can you repeat that
Okay.
a little louder, please?
Come closer to the microphone.
Loud and proud. Does it hurt when the bees bite?
So
He
she's
said, does
wondering-
it hurt when the bees bite?
Depends. So the ones that we use, there's different species of the stingless bees. There's actually over 175 unique species. So the ones that we use for the video with them on my face, the bite is tiny. It's like a little tinkle. But there are some that are as big as bumblebees that when they bite, they hold on really tight. So if they get to your hair or to your skin, and if you try to push them, just really like pull them really hard, you'll get some blood out in skin.
Okay, so stingless, but they can still defend themselves a little bit. Some of them.
Yes.
Wow.
Great. Thanks for that great question, River School. We'll see if we can swing back for another one. Okay, let's see. Where should we go next? We got Mr. Bit's crew, 6th graders in Rochester. I'm going to bring them in here front and center. How are we doing today, 6th graders? There they are. Let's unmute that mic and let's get a question. They're definitely excited, Rosa.
Okay, gotta say it quick.
What type of dance did you do?
I did a bit of different things. I did ballet, I did jazz, but I really love Latin dances as well as Oriental dances. So bachata and salsa, even belly dance, just a little bit of a variety.
All right. Very cool. We will swing back if we have a few moments, which I think we probably will. So, let's see. Miss Rollman's crew, grade 6-7s here in Canada in Waterloo. So actually about 20 minutes from me, not too far. Let's bring them in front and center. How are we doing, Waterloo? All right, let's unmute that mic and let's get a question.
Sonny, you want to ask your question? Has the volcano ever erupted in like the entire like?
All right. So I think he remembers you talking about how sometimes boiling rivers are associated with volcanoes. So he's wondering about eruptions, but the boiling river is unique, isn't it?
Yeah, so in the case of the Peruvian boiling river, it's actually not associated to a volcano. The nearest volcano is over 400 miles away, and it hasn't erupted in a very long time.
Yeah, so pretty unique and quite a mystery is, where is this boiling water coming from with no volcanic activity? And if we connect with Andres Russo, like we do from time to time, he can tell you the story a little bit more. He heard stories about this river and went out to find it. So it's a really cool story. So we'll have to have Andres back and join us again. All right, Miss Barra's crew hanging out with us from California. I think they're virtual today. How are we doing, Miss Barra?
We're doing great. Thank you. Okay,
right.
Mia.
How did you find out about all this stuff?
By going outside and asking questions. So for the Boiling River, I just did a lot of searches online of unique spaces and eventually got to connect with Andres, who was able to invite us into the space to do the work. For the stingless bees, I had visited different institutions in the Amazon, and I quite literally, when I was 15, went on, knocked some of their doors, introduced myself, and I said, I'm a young student, but one day I want to be a scientist and I want to learn more about what you do. And I connected with a senior scientist who eventually I kept in touch with, is now a dear friend. And when he learned about the science I was studying in my PhD, reached out so we could apply some of that to the stingless bees. So really knock, ask questions, and go outside.
All right. I think that's great advice for any student out there, is to stay curious, to ask questions. And if you're passionate about something, don't be afraid to go after it. Because I think a lot of people talk themselves out of, exciting careers or taking risks. And there's nothing better than when you can do what you love for the rest of your life. It doesn't feel like work all the time. All right. Well, we have some time for a few more questions. So give me a wave in your classroom if you want us to come back and get another question. I see the River School already. So let's start there. All right, River School, Washington, we're ready.
Do you ever get hurt when you explore?
Sometimes, but I really try not to. I really try to be a bit more careful and prepare in advance. You can never prepare enough. Whenever I travel to visit friends or family, I'm not your more organized traveler. Perhaps I don't organize my luggage so well, but when I go to the field to do exploration, I take so many days to prepare everything so well and really try to plan as much as I can. One time I did got hurt not so long ago when working with the stingless bees. It was ironic that I didn't get stung by the stingless bees. They don't have a sting. They cannot sting you. But we did got stung by wasps. I got stung by 7 wasps at the same time all over my body. And so that was quite painful and irritating. But, I was okay. We had medicine and all was fine.
All right. Always good to be prepared when you go in the field and flexible too, because the unexpected can happen, as I'm sure has happened on numerous expeditions. All right, Miss Rollman's crew. There we go. All right, they're excited.
Okay, how bad does it hurt when the stingless bees bite you?
So like I said, it depends. The ones that were on my face, I was there for 3 hours with them over here to try to take photos and videos, and they only bite me like at the end of the 3 hours, and it was on my hand, and it felt like imagine that someone pinches but very softly, so just a little pinch, you feel it but doesn't hurt you at all. But then I also saw how the bigger bees could hold on onto people's hair, and they knew how to handle it, so they were carefully removing it, but they were really sticking, and they told me that if you just were to pull it, it will rip off your skin and some of the blood.
All right. Vancouver, do you guys want to grab one more? Can we, you got one there for us?
Yes.
All right.
Come quickly.
Can you recover the burns from the boiling river?
Interesting question, and it really depends. So it can be an extremely dangerous place. And we did had an accident the last time we were there a few years ago, where one of the team members accidentally put both of his feet in boiling mud. So it was not quite exactly the boiling river, but it was a part of the river that had mixed with mud. And so it was still extremely boiled. Luckily, he was able to, as soon as he got in, he immediately jumped out, and we had a very specialized nurse that could take care of him. It took a while for him to recover, a few months, but he was able to recover full functions. However, if you were to spend more than a few seconds additional to what he did with any body part, most likely it will be a different story. It will be a bit more of a traumatizing experience.
All right. And I imagine as well, the further you move away from the source, the temperature starts to drop a little bit. So maybe if you fell in a few miles from the source, it might not be, as impactful as if you were really close. Like maybe the Spider-Man wall, it looked like it was pretty warm where you were going across.
That one was 80 Celsius, so it was still quite really hot, but eventually that's cooled down enough that people can go in and swim, actually. So it just kind of cools down quite a lot.
All right, and we'll check one more time with our crew in California. Do we have another question from our virtual students?
Okay, Brianna.
What's the coldest temperature in the boiling river, and what's the most exciting thing you've done there?
What's the coldest temperature, you said?
Yes.
The coldest temperature I remember feeling, it just felt like cold tap water, but all the way to like the ends, perhaps, kind of like, you could say almost like what could seem to be the beginning, just a small stream, because eventually it kind of becomes quite a big voluminous river. The most exciting thing there, I think it was the night exploration that we did. I mean, the Spider-Man wall hiking, that was an insane, amazing experience. But the night expeditions we did with some of the other teams that were looking for insects at night, we got to do it following the same path right next to the boiling river. And so at night, when really there's not that much illumination, the vapor becomes really prominent. And so all of a sudden, to me, it felt like the clouds had kind of like lowered and the clouds were next to us, because that's what the type of imagery that the vapor created to me. So that was really a beautiful scenery.
All right. One last question here from YouTube. There is someone joining from Peru, and they're wondering about the boiling river. Is that your favorite river, or have you had an experience with another river that surpasses the boiling river?
It's quite a unique experience. I think another river that I really love, it's the Teton River in the US, because we got to do some work with students. It's a relatively new river. It's only been there for the last 50 years because of some of geographical formations, etc. But I just became fascinated because although it's perhaps not quote unquote exotic because it's not boiling or in the middle of the jungle, it still provides such an important source of water and an ecosystem for the environment. And we did some work with fourth and fifth graders over there who really decided to focus on it and look at all the beautiful and complex things that it had, and were able to learn about their fish and their microbes, and really highlighting how beautiful any ecosystem can be. And so I ended up falling in love with that river too.
All right. Well, I want to start off with a huge shout out to our classrooms. Thank you to all the groups who are on camera. Thank you to the groups tuning in via YouTube. Your questions are always awesome. And thank you so much for playing Kahoot with us. Always fun for that extra interaction. Rosa, it's always great to be able to spend a little time with you. Good luck in the field. It sounds like you've got some action on the horizon.
Thank you so much, Joe. It's always such a pleasure to join in. I'll send you some updates for from the field very soon.
All right. Well, let's get the students a little bit loud. A few classes ducked out, but we still have some hiding backstage. Let's get a big goodbye and thank you
Thank
for
you.
Rosa before we sign off for the weekend. We're going to sign off for today.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
No.